A very good morning to everybody and welcome to this conference. As rightly said by the previous speaker, I'm also a little bit nervous, having been a speaker for many, many years globally. 2 years break was long enough. Although as a consultant, I've been on conferences, the telecon and everything for almost every day, 10 times. But speaking is something different in life. So please bear with me if I feel a bit nervous, which actually I'm not. So whatever I'm presenting today to all of you is my first-hand experience. I'm an European qualified person for pharmacovigilance, which means that I follow the safety monitoring regulations very, very closely, and I'm legally liable to whatever I look into, review, or advise as the EU QPPV. Other than that, I've been in the regulatory field for the last 23 years. And I'm a biotechnologist by my education, so I've been working very closely on the cannabinoids as such for the last 5 years, so to say, and most of the experience I've gained and what I'm presenting to you is my first-hand experience, especially when I was leading, I was also the EU QPPV for Epidiolex and Sativex. So I've monitored the regulations very closely and also evolving the regulations. So what I would like to present here to you is that the legal status of the cannabinoid-based medicinal products. So you have to understand that there are two categories for the products which fall under the actual regulations and the products whereby there is a kind of getaway from actually following the norms, the usual norms, what I call. So whenever we have something which is derived synthetically or we are using the phytocannabinoids, then there is high likelihood that these will require a marketing authorization. Whereas there are certain formulations which are prepared in the pharmacies, which is actually from a regulatory perspective called the magistral formulas, or the raw cannabis that we can use are kind of way out for not following the very strict regimen that is being developed over the last few years that I can say, and it's getting more and more stricter now. What I can tell you is that whenever you are developing something for medicinal use, there are certain norms to be followed, which are actually written down very clearly, what I like to call is a mother directive, which is the Directive 2001/83 EC, whereby all sorts of medicinal uses, medicinal purposes, and the routes for the marketing authorization have been described very clearly. Other than that, there are different types of other regulations that we follow. There are food regulations, there are food supplement regulations, there are novel food regulations, the cosmetics regulation, there are tobacco products, and last but not the least, the nutritional and health claims. So every single type of claim that you would like to make comes with a specific regulation to be followed. On top of that, then there are borderline. And I have to admit, I haven't included everything in today's presentation. Otherwise, it will be very, very lengthy, but I'm here to answer the questions later on. So when I say borderline, then you will have to consider very carefully how the product is going to be administered, what is the purpose that you are going to look into when we are using the product. Is it having a therapeutic value? Is it systematically absorbed? How is it being delivered? So all these categories define the classification for a product and which regulation to be used or not. So I would now like to touch base on the cannabinoid which are with the marketing authorization or which are going to be presented as a medicine, so which requires a marketing authorization. So what I can say from my own experience is that all the cannabinoid-based medicines, when we really are sure that it's a medicinal product, it falls under certain categories of the routes for the marketing authorization to be obtained. Now, as was previously said, it is also up to the states to define, but EMA, the European Medicines Agency, is closely monitoring all the cannabinoid-based medicinal products and what is the intention of its use. So there are certain categories. For example, if you are developing for the central nervous system, or if it's going to be as an oncological preparation, then these fall under the mandatory scope of centralized procedure, which is only and only monitored by the European Medicines Agency. Other than that, there are also certain norms whereby if you can propose that it's a supportive therapy, for example, or it's an adjunct, or it doesn't really fall under the so-called mandatory classification or the procedure to be followed, then yes, it goes up to the states. And this is what is called the non-centralized, which there are actually 3 other procedures. One is a let me see if I can highlight here. So this centralized EMA procedure is, as I said, under mandatory scope. Then there is a decentralized procedure, there is a mutual recognition procedure, and there are national procedures. And I will come to the following slides to briefly highlight the difference. So, but as you can see, what I've mentioned here, that if you go with the other procedures, not the centralized procedure, then there is a limit of the use in the respective member state market, because of course the member state is involved, and the member states decide what can be done, what cannot be done, what can be prescribed, what cannot be prescribed, and also the pricing. Not to forget, if we are marketing a product or we intend to market the product as a medicine, you will have to deal with the pricing and reimbursement also after the approval has been granted. And this pricing depends on what level of data do you present, how convincing those data are, and whether or not it's relevant for the patient population that you are going to treat. So that means that having a marketing authorization also implies that the product has been validated by clinical trials, so it has been tested for safety and efficacy through the extensive non-clinical. Non-clinical means animal studies have been conducted, and there are relevant clinical trials. And also, as also was just previously mentioned, the level of quality is also highly dependent on the approval procedure, because they would like to see what kind of GMP criteria has been followed, and the batches are going to be released by a qualified person for the quality purposes. Like I'm the qualified person for pharmacovigilance, there is another quality QP who actually assesses the batches which are being manufactured and then signs off a declaration that the product, the batch is good to be released to the market. So there is a lot to be done in case of medicinal products. So just briefly mentioning the difference, the mutual recognition procedure, it actually starts from one country, for example, and once this reference member state has approved the product, then it goes on to the concerned member states, which could be any after the first one has approved, and these concerned member states, they usually recognize the authorization given by the reference member state. However, again, because here it's the member state who's the decision-making party, it may be possible that one concerned member state may approve, the other may decline. But that doesn't mean that your marketing authorization is not going to be granted. It's only that in the concerned member state where it has been rejected, the authorization may not be granted on the basis of the grounds which will be defined very clearly in the assessment report. And then provided you fulfill the conditions, there is a good chance that you may receive the authorization at a later stage. Then is the decentralized procedure. So with the decentralized procedure, there is no pre-existing marketing authorization in any of the member states like it was in case of mutual recognition. And here what you have to do is you have to simultaneously submit to all the countries, including the reference member state, the concerned member states, and usually for decentralized, you need 2 countries or more. At the same time, the application is going to be assessed by all the countries. However, the communication to the applicant or the company who has presented the data is going to be relayed only by the reference member state, but that includes the assessment given by the concerned member states as well. Then, as I said, the centralized procedure, it covers the entire EU. So it's a single application to be placed on the market throughout the European Union, whereas in case of the mutual recognition and decentralized, it's not a single application, it's state-by-state application. So that means in case of centralized procedure, the scientific assessment is done by the European Medicines Agency. The authorization is also granted by the European Medicines Agency, and the marketing authorization is valid in all member states. Also, the product name is going to be identical in all the member states, whereas in case of the MRP or DCP, you can choose to have a different name, or even the regulators may suggest you to change the name to in different countries if there is something existing with a similar sounding name. And here the authorization is managed by the EMA or the European Commission. So as you can see, it's not only done with the first authorization, but after getting the authorization, there are other many post-approval commitments or post-approval changes. So here, in case of centralized procedure, it's easier to maintain. In case of the mutual recognition or decentralized, it's also a lot of work after the initial authorization. The only thing to bear in mind is that the cost of getting the authorization or the fee when you apply for the marketing authorization, in case of centralized procedure, is very easily close to €500,000, whereas in case of the MRP DCP procedure, it's much, much less. It's more or less for the DCP is one country, about €40,000 maximum. And in some countries, it's even like €7,000. So you have to very carefully define your regulatory strategies and the pathways that you would be going further with, taking all these concepts in mind. So as I mentioned already, the benefit of having a centralized procedure, although bit difficult, I would say, from my own experience, also a bit lengthy and expensive, but the after effect of this is that it gives the wider access to the European population to the product that you intend to launch, and the medicines are approved in all the EU countries at the same time. There is a centralized safety monitoring committee, and then it's a better and equal information for all the EU citizens, because you will have to have the patient information leaflet, which is approved in all the European languages at the same time. So there is no discrepancy with the level of information that you would be relaying to the European population. As I will briefly touch base on the legal basis of the application. So it's a full or full mixed application. So it's a complete dossier. I'll just show you the picture. What does it mean? There are other categories, but it's not relevant for us. But for your information, I listed all the legal basis for different types of applications. So it may be possible after the patent protection is over that there may be generic versions, maybe for Epidiolex or Sativex, but not at this moment in time. So the application that I had dealt with was the full or full mixed application, depending on the clinical data as well as published literature. And in some cases, the concept of herbal medicinal product is also being utilized from the cultivation practices, because this is where for cannabis-derived medicinal products, it's important to show the quality. So somewhere the concept of this herbal medicine is also being involved from a quality assurance perspective. So this is how it looks like in the EU for medicines. We have to present as a common technical document. And as a common technical document, as you can see, there are different modules. So module 1 to module 5. And this triangle or pyramid, whatever you want to call, it has various sub-modules. And it is required that you have to build up all these sub-modules either by your own clinical data or a mix of clinical data and the published literature. So it also depends what kind of pharmaceutical knowledge you are going to bring in. So this goes into module 3, which is the quality section. And this is where all the GMP information, the chemical, biological, or microbiological tests are going to be included. And module 5 is where all the clinical trials or the published literature data are going to be pulled together. And any of the animal testing goes into the module 4. And as I said, published literature is always supportive, and it's very important that it's going to be utilized. Other than that, there is well-established criteria. If you think that you don't want to go with a specific claim for treatment of, for example, epileptic seizures, then yes, you can have a kind of downgrading to your therapeutic indication, and you can go with a well-established structure. But here also we have to define that the well-established use within the community has been proven for the specific use you are going to present for at least 10 years or more. Other than the community, additional data from outside the community is also required. So in this case, the test and the trial results will be replaced by appropriate scientific literature. So your choice with the routes that you would like to apply, but it's important to note. I would like to skip this, but it will be available to you. I'm just cautious about time. But here, just in a short, I would like to say that in the well-established use that you have to provide enough data in terms of the quantitative aspects of the study, use in more or less 10 years, and the degree of scientific interest and the coherence of scientific assessments to be taken into account. But here, after the product has been authorized by the regulatory authorities, there are always publication of, as a summary of the product, which is called the European Public Assessment Reports. In building the dossier for the well-established use, you cannot use the e-parts because this e-part doesn't belong to your product, and it's not a valid rationale also to include other companies' published data in that regard. You will have to collect your own scientific data in this regard. So there are other non-standard marketing authorization. One is the marketing authorization under exceptional circumstances where comprehensive clinical data are not expected. Then there is a conditional marketing authorization where comprehensive data are expected to be obtained, but you can do that after the conditional marketing authorization has been granted. And for orphan medicines, now orphan medicines are those which are to be used for rare indications. There is a possibility to refer to supply on a named patient basis. I'm currently involved with this project. Again, conditional marketing authorization, it's intended for the treatment, prevention, or diagnosis of a seriously debilitating disease which is life-threatening. And it's only to be used in an emergency situation, like there were examples in case of epilepsy previously given. And if there is a designation for the rare disease to be treated. So that clearly reflects that there aren't many medicinal products which can be used for treating or preventing that particular disease. Hence, the conditional marketing authorization is being given. And we have to monitor very closely the benefit-risk balance, and it must be positive. The risk must not outweigh the benefit to be given by the product that you intend to market. And it's also likely that the applicant provide comprehensive clinical data at a later stage. So it kind of goes step by step. What you can also say is kind of rolling review. And we have to clearly define that there is an unmet medical need, and with the use of this product, the unmet medical need is being fulfilled. And the product in this regard is becoming immediately available. So there are kind of differences between the conditional marketing authorization and the marketing authorization under exceptional circumstances. In both the cases, the comprehensive data after authorization is available, and here under exceptional circumstances, there is no way that the data are going to be available even at a later stage. Then under conditional marketing authorization, only the full marketing authorization can be given once we provide the data. And here, in this case, under exceptional circumstances, it remains exceptional. And there is possibility to switch to the full MA after 1 year, but under exceptional circumstances, it's only and only valid for 5 years. There are annual renewals in case of conditional marketing authorization. However, in case of exceptional circumstances, there is for 5 years, every year, there is an annual reassessment done to make sure that the product is still safe to be used. And conditional marketing authorization is given only in case of central marketing authorization, and exceptional circumstances can be used for the state-specific procedures. I've already been indicated that it's my time to go further on, but I'm just going to briefly take 2 minutes. So just to mention, under the early access, the named patient program, there are 2 types of program. One is a compassionate use program, and the other one is named patient. The compassionate use program is generally on compassionate grounds, of course, and you cannot demand any price for the product. In different EU markets, there are different different structures in place for the compassionate use programs. But for the named patient program, although it's for the individual patient, it's possible to get the pricing for the product, but again, it's only valid for 1 or 2 years at the maximum, or till the time you obtain marketing authorization. The regulation is country specific. Their EMA doesn't play the role. So I'll be more than happy to share all this information during the roundtable if needed. So I'm going to skip all this, but the only criteria here is for the named patient, the prescription or statement from the physician is required. And at the time of marketing authorization, when we do submit, irrespective of the categories we follow, it's required that there is a risk management plan in place. It's a specific document, a lengthy one, which details what kind of monitoring plans are there to monitor the safety of the product that you intend to market. And the last slide, it's with regards to the safety reporting, which is very, very important. As I mentioned, for all the licensed or unlicensed product, it's required by law, the European Pharmacovigilance law, that all the adverse effects, adverse events related to the product as well as the product quality complaints are required to be monitored. And if there are any fatal, life-threatening cases, these must be reported within the specific timelines of 7 days, also if it requires hospitalization. In other cases, the serious cases within 15 calendar days. And this is what all goes into the risk management plan. And not to forget that the prescriber, the pharmacist, the wholesaler, the distributors, everybody has this responsibility, and it's a legal liability on them to have the process in place to monitor the safety of the product, because here the member states and the EMA are watching very closely the use of the product. And if you are not following the law, or if you are failing to report the cases, there could be a rejection of the ongoing procedure, or it could be withdrawal of your marketing authorization if it was already authorized. So with that, I have to end the session today. Thank you very much for listening to me so carefully. I appreciate it. Thank you.